Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to talk about 3 more spooky tales from the Creepshow series. I'm honestly kind of sad because Shudder has recently revealed that they only planned 4 seasons for the show. It could return, but it likely won't be for a few years. I think I might be able to make a 10-video series on it before we close the book on the Creepshow series. I might bookend it with the 3rd Creepshow movie. I've said in the past it's a sequel in name only, and I really don't want to watch it. There are fans out there, and since I loved the first 2 movies and the show, I feel that one day I'm going to have to cover it, but that's for another day. For now, let's get to the spooky stories. Our first story is titled Lydia, Layne's Better Half, from Season 1, Episode 4, originally airing on October 17, 2019. Our story starts off in the office of Layne Capital Group CEO Lydia Layne. Lydia is talking with 2 office workers, Celia and Tom, about their future with her company, as tremors shake her office. She appears unbothered. She informs them that one of them will be the company's new chief finance officer, but doesn't let the news linger long. Before telling Tom to practice his French, she congratulates Tom much to Celia's annoyance. Celia takes the news hard. It's revealed that Lydia and Celia are a couple. This news of Tom getting the job over her starts an argument. The 2 get into a heated exchange. Celia thinks that Lydia is holding her back, to be the lesser in the relationship. As Celia continues to lean into more and more insults on Lydia's character and age, it's clear that Celia was cut deep and is trying to hurt Lydia for her choices. Lydia tries her best to let the repeated insults and disrespect slide, but Celia takes it as a challenge to continue the insults, resulting in Lydia throwing her hands up in frustration, accidentally slightly hitting Celia with the back of her hand. This causes the tension between the 2 to escalate. Celia threatens to call the police and go to the tabloids with the scandal, threatening to ruin Lydia's reputation. The 2 get into a struggle as Lydia grabs Celia, trying to get her to calm down and listen. Celia flings herself from Lydia's grip, tumbling over the couch and hitting her head on the coffee table. Lydia tries to pick Celia up, thinking maybe she was knocked out by the blow, but finds she was impaled, one of Lydia's sharp wards having stabbed through her skull. Lydia is horrified by the discovery. She then props her up on the couch and tries to pull the shard from her head, only to have one of her staff knock at her office door. She covers for herself, telling the office worker that Celia is taking the news of not getting the job hard, instructing them to have her car brought around and to have the keys put in the visor. The office worker looks inside to see Celia slowly slumping down on the couch and agrees before leaving. Lydia moves Celia's body to her office chair and begins pushing her down the hallways, trying to get to the car. She runs into Tom, pushing Celia into a dark office in an attempt to hide her from sight. The 2 have an unintentional pun-laden conversation, Tom saying things like the promotion going to him over her must have hit her pretty hard, and how he's hoping she's not all in her own head about it. The elevator bell rings, and Lydia tells Tom to go on ahead and she and Celia will catch up. Lydia turns back to see Celia staring at her. Creeped out, Lydia forces her eyes closed and continues dragging her into the elevator, frantically pushing the button, hoping nobody joins them before the doors close. There's another earthquake and the elevator shambles to a stop. The 2 are violently rattled around inside. Celia and the chair are thrown into the corner, pinning Lydia and knocking her out. With the elevator stuck, Lydia considers pushing the emergency button, but thinks twice considering she has Celia's corpse in there with her. She tries to grab her phone only to find there's no service. Lydia tries to open the doors but finds they're trapped between floors. Lydia then climbs on Celia like a stepladder to open the elevator's hatch, but slips and knocks herself out once again. Upon waking at 3 a.m. that night, she finds Celia staring at her again. But this time, when trying to close her eyes, Celia's mouth snaps open. The elevator's brakes then fail, causing it to drop many floors. but the emergency brakes kick on violently, stopping the lift. The fire department tries to talk to Lydia through the speaker, but because of Celia's corpse, Lydia tries her best to stay silent. Lydia turns on her phone's flashlight to reveal that Celia is now sitting upright in the corner. She tries to push the button to hang up, only for Celia's corpse to appear near the button before it's pressed. Lydia then begins to go crazy, yelling at Celia's corpse, basically confessing on a hot mic to the fire department. But because her words lack context, there's no response on the other end. Lydia then falls asleep, waking up 24 hours later, still trapped in the elevator with Celia, who now appears to have once again moved places. Celia's body then leans forward, the whole time staring at Lydia. The shard slowly works its way loose. Lydia, not believing her eyes, goes to check out Celia's head, only for an arm to reach out from the gaping hole and strangle her. It's unclear if this is actually happening, or all in Lydia's mind. Freaked out, Lydia panics and forces the doors open once again, trying to squeeze out through the narrow opening between floors, as the elevator's cables are about to break. Just as Lydia is about to be free, Celia's body grabs Lydia by the hair, pinning her in place. As the elevator cables finally give out, we see Lydia's screaming face before the screen cuts to black. The fire department arrives and opens the elevator to find Celia's smiling corpse holding the severed head of Lydia, as the screen fades to black. Lydia Layne's better half has some interesting behind-the-scenes choices that explain why it feels so claustrophobic. The elevator wasn't real. It was a mini set built with removable walls, so the camera could slide in tight and make the audience feel trapped with the characters. Director Roxanne Benjamin loves confined horror, and her idea was to make the elevator feel like a big coffin, or mausoleum, trapping Lydia in a tomb of her own making. Special attention was paid to the sound effects in the episode, making not only the contained space feel real, but also making Lydia stepping on Celia to reach the hatch sound like she was stepping on a corpse, with the sounds of bones cracking and the metallic clanks of her bumping into the walls of the elevator. The character name Lydia Layne is actually a classic EC Comics style alliteration, which Greg Nicotero loves. This episode was one of the cheapest to produce for the first season because a bulk of the story is mostly two actors in one location. The core pitch wasn't originally even about a relationship going sour. That part was written in later to make the story feel more personal between the two characters. The original story was more about corporate corruption and Lydia eliminating her younger rival, which fits the EC Comics style of crime and grim, ironic punishment. Our second tale is titled Something Burrowed, Something Blue, from Season 4, Episode 5, originally airing on October 13th, 2023. Our story opens on a roaring fireplace. A man writes a letter to his daughter Allison, saying that it's been 15 years since they've seen each other, and that he's dying and wishes to have closure with her before he passes. He invites her and her boyfriend Ryan to brunch on a specific date. The letter arrives at Allison's apartment. Ryan is confused, thinking that her father was dead. She sneers that he ain't dead, but only dead to her. She goes on to say that a brunch won't fix their issues. She then tells Ryan the story of how, when her mother died, and her father shipped her off to boarding school, just as she needed him the most. Ryan tries to get her to go, saying they can be different and more caring than their parents. Allison says as far as she's concerned, her father can go to hell, but ultimately decides to go anyway. As Ryan drives to the address, he's confused, asking if this is the place. Before going to knock on the door, Ryan checks in with her once more, to ensure she's still okay with doing this. She says she's okay as the two ring the doorbell. Frank, Allison's father, answers the door with a smile, telling Allison she's the spitting image of her mother. Allison goes to introduce Ryan, but Frank already seems to know his name, which is strange, considering he and his daughter haven't spoken in nearly 15 years. He invites both inside. As they eat, Allison gets pissed, telling her father that she's not here for a brunch, and that if he has something to say, to just say it. Frank puts up his hand, saying he'll get to the point. He admits that he was a horrible father, and that he did what he did because he was hurting too. He offers them the house to have their wedding at, offering to pay for everything and have it be as beautiful as she ever dreamed. He even goes further and says he'll be passing soon, and when he does that, his house and all his money will be theirs. Allison coldly turns him down, saying there was no plan for a wedding, saying they plan to elope. Ryan smiles, but you can tell he's taken aback by the big offer and Allison's outright refusal. Having been refused and insulted at every turn, Frank finally lets the pleasantry slip, saying her choice is sensible, considering the expense of a wedding couldn't be covered by her wages as a substitute teacher. Allison storms off, saying she'll wait for Ryan in the car. Frank, defeated, continues to talk to Ryan, asking him if he really loves Allison and if he's willing to keep her safe, even from things he might not fully comprehend. Ryan assertively answers yes. Frank gets up, telling Ryan there's something he needs to see, taking him down the basement, revealing a big black vault door. Frank tells Ryan that even if he had 1,000 guesses, he would never come close to the truth that lies behind this vault door. Frank opens it and the two step inside. The two walk into a room with a red glowing pit. A deep growl echoes from below. Ryan asks what's down there, and Frank asks if he's ever heard of a creature called the Minyoko. He goes on to tell the story of the creature that lived under the Earth's surface for thousands of years. He tells him of the earthquake that killed many people, stating it's strange for the Midwest. He tells Ryan that he's been the guardian since he was 16, and the time has come to pass the torch, telling Ryan that the Minyoko requires a human life to feed on every 15 years, saying if Ryan wants to keep Allison safe, he has to be the one to take over this responsibility. Ryan is in disbelief at the story, but Frank tells him to listen close, telling him that you can hear the creature slowly moving closer to the surface, waiting for its next meal. Ryan refuses, telling Frank that even if he did believe him, human sacrifice isn't something he's willing to do for the sake of anyone. Frank tempted him with the wealth and life of the person who's the creature's caretaker, telling him to think it over. He tells Ryan that the sacrifice must happen on his wedding day, darkly joking that he's sure someone on his guest list won't be missed, before closing the vault door. Later that night, Ryan and Allison argue. Ryan asks why Allison never told him she came from wealth. Ryan asks why they can't get married at the estate. Allison outright refuses, saying there's no way in hell. But just as before, she relents, and the two have a scheduled wedding at Frank's home 3 weeks later. Frank gives Ryan a pep talk, again darkly joking with Ryan, telling him this is a life-changing event, not only talking about the wedding, but the monster in the basement as well. The wedding begins. Frank walks Allison to the altar, and the two are wed. At the reception, everyone is having a good time, and the couple dance. Frank's words echo through Ryan's head, that someone on the guest list won't be missed, as Ryan looks around at all the guests. Ryan breaks off to talk with Frank. Frank says he hasn't seen Allison this happy since she was 7 years old. Ryan, trying to just get feeding the creature out of the way, asks how they go about it. Frank gives Ryan some white powder in a baggie, telling him to slip it into someone's drink. They'll pass out and throw them into the pit. He states the person won't feel anything and they won't wake up. Frank is adamant that it will be painless and that the world will be safe for another 15 years. Frank states that Allison can never know about the Minyoko in the basement. Ryan decides on his cousin Darrell to be the sacrifice, as he's acting out at the party. Frank sits with his daughter, and the two share a nice moment for the first time in a long time. He slips Darrell the drug. The people at the party believe Darrell had too much to drink, as Ryan helps him inside and down to the vault. Just as he's about to push Darrell in, Ryan changes his mind, unable to go through with it. But Darrell, already being 3 sheets to the wind, stumbles back and falls into the pit. Frank appears to ask if it's over. Ryan, stammering in disbelief, says it's over, and the two leave the vault. They have a drink before returning to the party, toasting to the marriage and to the passing of the torch. But Frank feels woozy and collapses. He awakens tied to a chair. Ryan tells him they're on his family's estate. Though long forgotten, it too has a Minyoko, though it's much older than Frank's. He says that he knows Frank lied, saying The Minocone don't make it quick or painless. They hold on to their prey, slowly feeding on them for 15 years. He goes on to tell Frank that he told Allison about it on their first date, but was shocked that her family had one too. So he told Allison, and she came up with the perfect sacrifice to the Lee's monster, putting her father, Frank, on the menu. She makes a deal with Frank, saying if he can tell her Ryan's last name, she'll let him live. But Frank doesn't know it, revealing that all this was just to replace himself as the caretaker. Ryan goes on to say he's happy to take over for him, considering he's been doing it for his family since he was 15, to which Allison agreed, saying she knew Frank was an asshole, but forcing her husband into something just because he had no one else was low even for him. She says feeding the monster in the pit's better than therapy, before having Ryan push the rock that's acting as an anchor into the pit, forcefully pulling Frank into the deep crimson hole. The two newlyweds return to Frank's house, content the world is safe for another 15 years. They're happy to have a big house and lots of money, but just as they're about to enter the house, Darrell comes out of the front door, covered in goop, telling Ryan that he fell down the pit and had to do some Batman maneuvers to climb out. The couple are shocked, as Allison looks at her phone to see that it's midnight, and that the monster wasn't fed. Just then, the giant creature bursts up through the house and lunges at the screaming newlyweds, before the screen fades to black. Something Burrowed, Something Blue doesn't have a lot of official behind-the-scenes info compared to other segments, but what we do know is that it was written by Todd Spence and Zach White, and directed by John Esposito. The story centers around a wealthy father, played by horror icon Tom Atkins. There aren't any official interviews or production notes that go into how the monster for this segment was executed, but it's safe to assume it was pure CGI, which makes sense because the only true reveal of the creature is in the very closing moments of the story. What we can say is that it stays very consistent with EC's comic book style. The characters make a bad or selfish choice, and they pay heavily for that mistake. It's an episode that lingers and loves to tell more than it shows, and it does so in a great way. It builds tension, since the monster in the pit needs to be fed every 15 years, and it's been 15 years since Allison's mother passed away. It's heavily implied, but not outright stated, that Frank used his wife to feed the creature, telling his daughter that she simply passed away. It's also heavily implied that Frank has been spying on Allison for the years she's been gone, already knowing details about her life that he shouldn't. Overall, it's a good episode, but a slow burn. I always say that with stories like this, it would be better if the monster were partly revealed, giving the viewer the terror and scope of the danger before fully revealing it at the end. A Creepshow story that did this perfectly was from the first Creepshow movie from 1982, in the story titled The Crate. Our final story is titled Smile from Season 4, Episode 1, and since this show streamed, it also originally released on October 13th, 2023. Our story opens as James and his wife Sarah exit an award ceremony. Sarah comments on how good it was that James thanked her in his speech. James smiles and jokes that it's a line she added. Sarah then tells James she wants to call and check on their son, Max. She takes her phone and walks away as James is questioned by award show attendees. Sarah talks to Max via FaceTime. It's revealed the young man is throwing a movie watching party with his friends, as his parents are away. Sarah tells him to make sure their house isn't destroyed. Max playfully calls his mom old. She tells him that things went well for his father, calling him famous. Max is happy to hear things went well for his dad. Sarah pulls James from the conversation, and they tell Max goodnight. They hang up. James says he thought they were going home, but Sarah tells him no. Tonight, they're celebrating. They go to a busy restaurant in town. James says Sarah is crazy. They'll never get a table, but she made a reservation in advance. The two take a seat and begin enjoying their night. They drink and flirt. A man with a hood approaches their table and tells them to smile, snapping their photo and handing James the Polaroid. James is weirded out by the photo taking, but even more so by the photo. He says the guy was standing closer than this, meaning the man took more than one photo of the couple. The two talk about it. James asks if this was part of Sarah's plans, but she looks just as confused. They go across the street to try and get the angle right. James says it's weird. Sarah finds another photo, taken from a spot down the street. They're both weirded out, commenting on how it's possible to have a photo of them taken just seconds ago be in the place they just got to. They again go to match the location, and the photo is taped to a pole for San Miguel Street. The back of the photo saying "Save Me" in big bold letters. James picks up the photo and is about to look at it, but Sarah stops him. Taking off her shoes, she says that it's a trick and she'll still have her shoes on in the photo. But when James looks at the Polaroid, it's of him and Sarah again. But this time Sarah has her hands up holding her shoes, just as she's currently doing. Freaked out, they again match up the locations. They notice the latest one came from inside the graveyard. James tells Sarah to stay behind, but she says hell no and quickly follows after. This time, the photo location draws them to a plaque stating Daniel 8:16. And I heard a man's voice call out from the banks of the river, "Gabriel, show this man the meaning of his vision." James looks down fearful at the plaque, telling Sarah that he thinks he knows what's happening. He says there's something he never told her, or anyone. He flashes back to that day when he took his award-winning photo, taking cover behind a burning car, snapping photos as people run from gunfire. He takes a photo of a man and child struggling to stay afloat in the raging river, flailing their arms trying to get James' attention. James sees them and could have helped, but decides only to take their photo instead. He says he could have saved them, but left instead. When he came back, both the man and boy were gone. Sarah doesn't believe this is anything more than a prank. She finds another photo. Panicking, it's a photo of their son, Max, with the word "pray" written in black letters. The two rush home only to find Max and his friends seemingly gone. The two are freaking out as they rush through the house, only to find Max sitting up from the couch, fallen asleep while waiting for them. Max is wondering why his parents are freaking out. As James asks if anyone else is there, Max says all his friends left hours ago. James shows Max the picture and sternly asks who took it. Max, afraid, says he doesn't know. As their house begins to rumble, all of the photos that James had taken of people in horrible situations begin to crack and break before the power cuts out. Suddenly, a bright white flash of light flashes from a Polaroid camera on a tripod. James is about to grab the photo when Sarah quickly tells him not to. Sarah calls 911 as James grabs the photo. He takes one look at it and tells her to hang up. They turn around to see Max is gone. James sees a child floating face down in the pool and, assuming it's Max, he jumps in to save him. But when James resurfaces, he's alone. Sarah reaches down to look at the photo. As James is in the pool, Max keeps appearing and disappearing from random sides of the pool, calling out to his father. Sarah looks at the photo and screams. James is about to reach Max when he turns into the decomposed man from the photo that James took. James grabs the man by the arm and pulls him into the water, beginning to choke him. Sarah screams at James to stop, but he continues to struggle. He tightens his grip and pushes the man deeper, but just as the man stops moving, he turns into Max. Just then, off camera, a man's voice says, "Smile," before a final Polaroid is taken of James holding Max limp in his arms as the screen fades to black. Smile was written by Ben Rock and Bob DeRosa and directed by John Harrison, one of the legacy Romero collaborators connecting Creepshow all the way back to its original movie. This one is structured almost like an art museum thriller. The tension is built in architecture, framing, and composition rather than gore or creature set pieces. The horror comes from the act of looking. The idea that if the characters had simply refused to play along and follow the trail, nothing would have happened. This is a tighter segment compared to some stories. It runs about 15 minutes, making it one of Creepshow's shorter stories. It leans on the classic idea that pride cometh before the fall. Profiting from selfish actions leads directly to supernatural punishment. A Creepshow entry that proves you don't need blood spraying everywhere or monsters lurking to make a story creepy. Despite sharing the title Smile, the Creepshow story uses a completely different premise. There's no crossover or direct connection with the 2022 horror movie of the same name. And yes, I'll be covering Smile in the very near future, but that's all I have for you in this one. I want to thank you for watching, and a special thank you to all the channel members. Have a great week, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.